Hi, welcome to part 3 of our interview with Marxian professor Richard Wolff. So we need people like you in politics. I know that you had meetings about running for mayor of New York, and there were a lot of people behind you in that effort. Why didn't you run?
Well, let me tell you a story. I did run for mayor of the city of New Haven, Connecticut, where I lived for 30 years.
Okay.
Back in the middle 1980s, we created the New Haven Green Party, and I ran as the mayoral candidate. There had never been a Green Party in New Haven. New Haven is a very democratic city. The last Republican mayor in New Haven was in 1953 to this day. So this is a democratic place. I ran in 1985. I got 10% of the vote first time I ran. 2 years later, I ran for city council. It's called the Board of Aldermen in our town. And I got 47% of the vote. And it taught me a fundamental lesson. If you go door to door to the American people and you tell them that this system isn't working and it's time for change, you will be amazed at how many people will sit and talk to you and have a good conversation, and a significant number of them will do something they never thought they would do because they come from families where everybody either voted Democratic or voted Republican. That's all they know. That's all they ever heard of. You are asking them to do something fairly big by stepping out of that tradition. So we're asking something big, and that 10% did it the first time they ever met me and just had back and forth with me. And then 47, if I had stayed in New Haven, I'd be an elected official there. And that's despite the fact that I'm very critical and I have the word Marxian attached to my name and stuff like that. If a person like that can do it in the city of New Haven, Connecticut, which isn't that different from a lot of other American cities, then believe me, it can be done. And I think you're seeing now, there was a story the other day in the New York Times about candidates around the country who accept the label socialist, kind of the way Bernie did, being able to get all kinds of people's supports and making real inroads and running for little offices at the local municipal level all the way up. I'm finding this. I think you're seeing a massive shift in the American population. It's certainly coming up in my experience.
Which is why they need to throttle shows like this, so that doesn't happen. So why didn't you run for mayor of New York?
In order to do that properly, it was clear to me. Having done it before.
Right.
You need a certain minimum amount of support. You need a certain minimum amount of money because you cannot reach populations in the time it's no accident that money is crucial. That's one of the ways you keep a system like this going. If you need a lot of money to be able to do it, then only the people who either have it or can get it are in a position to run. And I explicitly found that there was a lot of interest, but I would need 4 or 5 years to work on that to get to the point. I think people are doing that now, and I take my hat off to them. But we were faced with that decision in a matter of months, and it just wasn't feasible.
Speaking, just take a stand politics for a second. Cynthia Nixon is now challenging Andrew Cuomo from the left. Do you think she's the real deal? Because I'm skeptical, and I know the money people are going to come after her now. Meaning I'm sure the consultant class, and she will be co-opted if she isn't already. What do you think?
I don't know much about her, but you're absolutely right. She has sort of staked out positions clearly to the left of Andrew Cuomo. On the other hand, positions to the left of Andrew Cuomo are not difficult to stake out since he is awful. I mean, there is no nice. I can't. I mean, I actually knew his father, Mario Cuomo, because he worked with my father years ago. And the son isn't the father.
No.
And the father who made his compromises still had a kind of core old New Deal kind of solidity that you could see and that would come out. His son is a hustler. He's a political hustler. He travels right down the middle. He makes deals with the wealthiest of Americans who live in New York State, heaven knows.
He thwarts the will of the people.
Yeah, he has nothing to do. He's running for president. He has the imagination. He's going to do that. So it created a vacuum. We had a woman unknown, Cynthia Nixon, because of Sex in the City and all of that is very well known. We had a woman, Zephyr Teachout, who did extraordinarily well against him for an unknown person who came in at the last minute. I think it's a testimony to the fact that he has alienated an enormous number of people. We have a third party in New York City, the Working Families Party, and they've endorsed Cynthia Nixon now, which is unusual for them to break from the normal endorsing of the Democrat. I think all of these are straws in the wind, however well she does, that the dissatisfaction with conventional politics, left, right, Republican, Democrat, running very, very deep. And not just here, in Europe. You know, suddenly you have basically the Bernie Sanders of England. Jeremy Corbyn walking away. I mean, he's the most popular politician, the way Bernie is here, because he oozes less phoniness than all the others do. And you see in Italy, the comedian who's a big success there. And that's not so much because he's all that good. It's because people have had it with the conventional Republican and Democrats mouthing their thin civics class kind of rhetoric. Nobody wants this anymore, and everybody holds them responsible for the mess we're in. Why would you want more of them? That's one of the reasons Trump is in there.
Yes.
Because people looked at Clinton and said, oh, my God, not more of that. And even though he looked really scary, she was for sure not the real deal. And he might be, and it turns out he isn't, but he might have been, at least for some people.
So you don't put most of the blame for Trump. You don't put most of that on Susan Sarandon, Jill Stein, or the Russians?
No. I'm afraid that Mr. Trump is half right when he says this is a lame excuse for having lost an election. Whatever the Russians may or may not have done, which my guess is we'll never know anyway, in the nature of that kind of thing that goes on. But I think what you're seeing here is a very sad... Look, let me give an example that may not offend anyone. Britain. The British working class has really been savaged since 2008. They've been treated worse than the Americans. Their real income has dropped by about 10 to 12%.
Really?
It's just staggering what has happened to the British working class. So when they went to vote this last time...
For Brexit?
On Brexit, on whether the British stay in Europe or they go out, they didn't care about in or out of Europe. They don't know about it. They don't care about it. They were so angry at what had been done to them for 10 years, that the minute they saw the ruling folks in the Conservative Party and also the Labour Party saying, yes, we must stay in Europe, they all said, oh, no. And they gave the collective finger. Yeah. That's what they did. It made no sense. They're not going to be helped by this. They're learning now that it's going to, the rich are going to try to make money out of this, and they're going to get screwed again. This is the reality, because that's not the problem in or out of Europe. They have to face what the real problem is, that they have a ruling class that's squeezing them to save itself. And if they can learn that in England, which they are slowly doing, then my feeling is we'll learn it here too. And that's what Mr. Trump is. A mistake. You may have given your finger to the system, but you put into place a person who's going to do it right back to you. You didn't solve your problem. You didn't understand what your problem was. So you took a dead end, and you're going to see that it's a dead end.
So if the answers to our problems involves the political class and taking back control of our government from corporations, what I've been telling people is that there is no way Wall Street, fossil fuels, and the military-industrial complex are ever going to allow one of the major parties to represent the people. That isn't going to happen. So what do you think should happen? I think that Bernie Sanders is missing his moment. And he's the most popular politician by far. He's way more popular than the Democrats and Republicans will ever be. And if he started another party, it would immediately become the most popular party in the country. Yet he won't do it. Now, William Binney, who is an NSA codebreaker on my show, he said it's because we live in a surveillance state and they control everyone that way. Why do you think he won't do it?
I'm not 100% sure he won't. That is, I think it's always in the back of his mind, partly because he's been the outsider type all his life. I actually knew him a little bit when he was a young man many years ago. And he's always been, ornery and different and not going to go along and not going to be persuaded that his career would be better off if he toned it down. He really does believe the things he said. This is not a convenience of his position. And I think if they make it impossible in just the way you suggest, if they really close it all down, he will do it because he will rather finish his life being the daring one who tried than being the blah who went along. Because, he doesn't have that much more time. I don't mean to be macabre, but what's he saving it up for?
I don't know.
But I also think, I guess maybe I disagree with you a little bit, Jimmy. The British didn't expect Brexit. Americans never expected Trump. Things are happening that were not in the script, were not planned. Things are spinning out of control. And I don't think they can put that genie back in the bottle all that quick. It's underway. Yeah, they don't want it, and they will go to extraordinary lengths, and that's scary. To stop it. But I'm not sure they can do it. After all, remember, every other horrible empire, emperor, czar, king who never wanted to be overthrown, it happened anyway. We used to describe the Soviet Union, remember, as a surveillance state and the KGB and a lot of that was true. But when the time was up for the Soviet Union, all of that didn't help him. It disappeared. It imploded. I don't see any reason to imagine that can't happen here.
Do you think it will require another economic collapse? And do you think another economic collapse is coming?
Most of the people I know on Wall Street, and I live fairly close to Wall Street, and because I went to the fanciest universities in the United States, a lot of my friends and classmates are big shots. I like to tell people that one of my classmates at Yale, where I got my PhD, was Janet Yellen, who became the head of the Federal Reserve.
Oh, okay.
Things like that. I know they know me, and I know them. The general opinion is the following. Everywhere the capitalist system has ever come over the last 300 years, it has shown itself to be an unstable system. It has an economic downturn or a business cycle or whatever you want to call it. And on average, they happen every 4 to 7 years. Okay, on average. That doesn't mean it's always 4 to 7, but on average. Okay.
We've been in a 10-year expansion.
Right. We have the last major down was 2008, 2009. So you do the arithmetic, and everybody is saying, we're due for one. That doesn't mean it's going to happen in 2018 or 2019. But if you want to ask on Wall Street, is an economic downturn coming, and could it be a doozy? The answer is at least 40% of the economists of all persuasions believe that is coming. And that's why you've had warnings in the last several weeks. The IMF has put out a warning. The World Bank has put out a warning. Here's the warning. We are due for one. And if it comes, it risks being a real bad one, not a little mild one for 18 months with 2 or 3 percentage point unemployment, but something more along the lines of what happened in 2008 and 2009. Why? Because we haven't learned any of the lessons of 2008 and 9. We are now lending money to people who can't afford a house. We're lending money to people who can't afford a car. Banks are making cash disbursements because they can rake in enough to make that a profitable gambit in the way that it was before. They're creating special securities that mingle these things together the way they did before. Because the low interest rates of the last few years, consumers and companies and governments have borrowed more money than ever before in human history. If things go down, they can't pay those loans back, and that's going to upset this system on a scale we haven't seen before. Will this all happen? Nobody knows that. But could it? Oh, for sure. And could it be really bad? Yeah. And if that happens, on top of the trouble most Americans are still in, left over from the last one, then I think there's no limit to what could happen.
So why didn't anyone see it coming in 2008? I always
Good question.
So
very few.
There's only like maybe two people who I ever saw in the culture who were saying it, and one of them was Greek. So why didn't anyone see this coming?
I think the answer is the power of ideology. We came out of the trauma of the Great Depression of the 1930s, which, remember, lasted from 1929 to 1941. In 1933, the unemployment rate in the United States, 25%. That's 6 times what it is today, et cetera, et cetera. We came out of that trauma not only willing and able to do things we had never done before, tax the rich to create Social Security and unemployment company, re-elect the same man president because he could do no wrong, FDR, because he had done this, tax the rich and given to the man. We did things we had never seen before. But we also persuaded ourselves that we had learned the lessons. We could now manage this capitalist economy. Monetary policy with interest rates and money. Fiscal policy with taxation and government spending. I went to Harvard, Stanford, and Yale, the only schools I ever went to, where they all taught us we know how to manage this economy. That's a mindset that means you have no idea what to do when it falls apart because you don't believe it can fall apart. You know how to do it. The reason no one saw it coming was literally we had trained ourselves not to see it coming, to believe that it couldn't possibly happen. So when it did, panic. Real panic. Because, give you an example. Back in the 1940s, every graduate program in economics teaching skilled economists had a course called the business cycle. You're supposed to understand this system we live in is very unstable. It bounces around like a rubber ball, and you have to learn about that. By the 1960s, that course was gone because the ideology said we don't have to study this. This is an anachronism. It's ancient history. We don't have to do. So by the time the generation in charge now gets to be in charge now, it has had an education where it has never studied these things. That's why we are in a mess we're in now, in part, because we didn't know what we were doing in 2008 and 9. There was no preparation, no understanding. It was a mess. It's been a mess ever since. So my guess is that the answer to your question is, we didn't see it coming because we had persuaded ourselves that it couldn't happen, that we lived in an economic system that, in fact, had overcome the instability. It never did that. It hasn't overcome that instability anywhere where capitalism has settled in. Not here, not Europe, not Latin America, not China, nowhere. It's one of the intrinsic flaws of capitalism, which we don't want to face, because if you do, then you have to scratch yourself and say, why are we living in an economic system that bounces around like this every 4 to 7 years, throwing millions of people out of work, making it impossible to calculate how your business is going to survive, because in the next 4 years, who knows what's going to come and upset your plans? This is no way to organize an economic system. Why would you do that? The fear of those questions being asked contributes to the fantasy that it can't happen to me. It's really like a young person saying, I will only be loved. There will never be anybody who hates me. It's a very painful when you discover, no, there will be people who manage that.
Please make sure you're subscribed. It only takes a second. Make sure you're subscribed and click that bell so they give you a notice whenever we drop a video. And if you can become a patron, we give you hours of bonus material every week. Our next live show is June 30th in Portland, Oregon. And we do a super solid chat every Saturday. That's our live stream. You can ask us questions and we answer back. That's Saturdays at 2 p.m. Pacific. Plus, we're on Steam It. We're steaming it right now.